holy shit, I've never actually heard about this before, and I'm reading about it just now. There are times you read about the founding of Israel and you go, am I reading an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory right now? Because this can't be true. This is insane. But it's true. Zionism is wild. So apparently between 1948 and 1954, between 1,000 and 5,000 babies were kidnapped from Jewish immigrants, mainly from Yemen, but also from like Egypt, Morocco, Libya, other Arab countries. And they were given to mainly Ashkenazi Holocaust survivors. Apparently, according to the lowest estimates, 1 in 8 Yemenite immigrant babies was kidnapped during this period. They're not entirely sure where all of them went, but that's where they assume most of them went, was to Jewish Holocaust survivors, to replace their babies they lost. Netanyahu has apologized for it and said it's a stain on the country. So it's not like some conspiracy theory. Just, there's so many things in Israeli history that read like that, where you're just like, I can't believe this is true. This country is insane. And it's extra awful because hateful people that are lacking in critical thinking skills and empathy look at this country that claims to represent all Jewish people and the actions that they're taking and go, see, Mustache Man was right. And it leads to increased anti-Semitism, and it's terrible. None of that is okay. There are some Ethiopian Jews in Israel, yes, but they're discriminated against heavily. They're segregated in schools. A lot of times they're not even allowed in private schools. There's the Depo-Provera scandal where Ethiopian Jews exclusively were sterilized without their permission. There was the time when the Israeli blood banks threw all of the Ethiopian blood out because they didn't want any HIV-infected blood. So they just assumed, well, the Ethiopians are the ones that have it. They're segregated into ghettos with underfunded schools and inferior housing and jobs. It's like they're allowed in so that they can do the dirty work that none of the Ashkenazis want to do. They're regularly called infiltrators and a cancer on society by politicians and the media. In Israeli pop culture, there are tropes of Ethiopians having a lack of hygiene, causing crime, and having low culture. So yes, there's Ethiopian Jews in Israel, but that's like saying there's black people in the United States. There's still racism. I hate to break it to you. They're still racist.
Babies are a product, so it was a systemic business. You thought that they are saving Yemeni Jews from themselves.
In most common scenarios, the babies were taken in the middle of the night without parents' consent, when parents were not there, and the next day they were told that they got sick and they were taken to a hospital, and then from there, essentially, they were never brought back. So they would be told that they died, and then most cases, the parents didn't see a death certificate or a grave, didn't get to mourn their babies.
ובאותו יום, לדאבוננו, כשהייתה כבר בת 28 יום, היא ישבה והניקה את רחל בזרועותיה, ובזמן ההנקה, בשיא של ההנקה, ניגשה אליה האחות, חטפה את הילדה בחוזקה, ורצה לכיוון החוצה לאמבולנס. ואימא שלי הייתה גם בהלם, אז ישר היא קפצה והיא מהר רצה אחרי האישה. האחות הזאת עם התינוקת, אימא לא יכלה להשיג אותה.
Tourists from America had better access to the children than their own mothers.
אימא שלי ואבא שלי, עד היום, זאת אומרת, עד יום מותם, הם כל הזמן חשבו, אולי בכל זאת יראו אותה. אבל זה לא התקיים. שמחות כבר לא היה להם מאז. הם כל הזמן פשוט היו אבלים.
This wasn't an accident. These weren't mistakes. This was a system, and the system should be held to account.
But even when Ethiopian people were immigrated to Israel, Ethiopian Jews, women then report, 2013, that's not like 50 years ago, they reported that they were given against their consent and without their knowledge contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color. Israel is a racist, apartheid country that is projecting this shiny example of secularism and democracy for the people, so people can accept whatever they do because they look at Palestinians as lesser people. This is the whole point. This is the whole point. And I would like to quote Winston Churchill. He had a quote that say, I don't believe that we have made a great wrong to the Red Indians of America or the black people of Australia because they were replaced by a higher race, a stronger race, a more world-wisely race. This is why Queen Rania is criticizing the West. This is why we here said, like, where are your values? Because this is the crux of the problem. It's not Hamas. It's not Palestine. It is people looking at us as lesser human beings.
Bassem, I don't dispute the characterization that a lot of the Israel administration look upon Palestinians as lesser people. Otherwise, they wouldn't.
They even look at the Ethiopian Jews and Yemeni Jews like less.
I wouldn't dispute that. I want to quote you to end this.
No, why would you end this? Don't end this.
We'll be talking for 2 hours.
Why not?
At some point,
we're
we have
having
to end
an
this.
amazing time.
We can do another interview. Well, this one goes big. I think this is a neat way to end it. He said, I actually believe there is a middle ground between everybody and they can meet. I direct my criticism for the extreme of each one of them.
נגיד מישהו בתימן עכשיו רואה את זה, הוא רוצה לדעת אם אתה רוצה לבקר בתימן, בסנה.
בטח שרוצה.
אוקיי. אתה רוצה לחזור לגור שם?
לא.
למה לא?
טוב לי פה.
אוקיי.
לא גרתי אף פעם שמה.
מה?
לא גרתי אף פעם שמה.
אבל נולדת שם, לא?
נולדתי וזהו. הביאו אותי ושאר במטוס לפה.
אוקיי. אז אתה לא מכיר.
לא מכיר שום דבר.
The term Mizrahi means Jewish person from the Middle East North Africa region. Ashkenazi, on the other hand, refers to a Jewish person from Europe. In Israel, initially, the Zionist project was dominated solely by Ashkenazi people, and they viewed themselves as superior to the Mizrahi people because of their self-perceived civilized European culture. To some extent, they still dominate Israel, with low Mizrahi wages subsidizing their higher standard of living. However, the Mizrahi experience has improved in the modern era, with 1/3 of the Mizrahi population being part of the middle class. To see the prevalence of negative attitudes towards the Mizrahi people early on during the Zionist project, one need only look to the words of David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, who said, "A good many of the immigrants are illiterate and show no signs of Jewish or human culture." The Orientalist attitude of Ben-Gurion towards the Mizrahi people was common amongst those in the upper echelons of the Zionist movement. These bigoted views of the Mizrahi people in Israel manifested in them being abused by state institutions. For example, upon arrival to Israel, Mizrahi immigrants were sprayed with the pesticide DDT. This was ostensibly done to delouse the immigrants. However, DDT at high exposure levels to humans can cause negative side effects such as seizures. Whilst the experiences of the Mizrahi people have generally been poor, some of them have been worse than others. The experience of the Yemeni people tells a particularly sad story. To first get the Yemenite Jewish population from Yemen to Israel, there was an operation which went by the name Operation Magic Carpet. From the beginning of the operation, the Yemenite Jewish people were treated horribly. Esther Meir Glitzenstein highlighted that what was unique about the experience of immigration to Israel for the Yemeni people was the heavy death toll during transit. 700 of them died in camps, and a further 150 died in actual transit due to the lack of basic necessities. Beyond the dire conditions they faced during the transit to Israel, the experience of the Yemenite Jews once they arrived in Israel was one that was uniquely cruel. One event encapsulates this perfectly. This is what is commonly referred to as the Yemenite Baby Affair. The Yemenite Baby Affair involved children of Yemeni descent being taken from their parents between June of 1949 and September of 1950. In Israel, Yemeni immigrants were placed in camps that had formerly been owned by the British. The conditions in these camps were harsh, and therefore sickness was prevalent amongst those housed within them. This is where the story of the Yemenite Baby Affair begins. Yemeni parents of sick children had their children taken away from them. Ostensibly, they were put in hospitals by the Israeli regime so that they could get better. The parents were then not allowed to visit their children in hospital, and they later received spoken word that their children had died. In some cases this was true, however in others the children had not died, and in fact they had been put up for adoption, and eventually ended up with childless Ashkenazi parents. This is estimated to have affected between 1,000 and 5,000 Yemeni children. The parents of the sick children were then not allowed to visit them in hospital, and they later received spoken word that their child had died without ever seeing the body. In reality, however, in some cases, the children had not died, and in fact they had been put up for adoption and eventually ended up with childless Ashkenazi parents. This is believed to have affected between 1,000 and 5,000 children. Although there were rumours almost instantly, the Yemenite Baby Affair was largely ignored in Israel by the media and the government. March of 1968 is the first significant date with regards to the case, because an inquiry was launched by the Knesset. However, no satisfactory answers were found. The story again went quiet until 1986, when there was a massive public rally that organised a committee for the discovery of the missing Yemeni children. However, once again, little was done to rectify the situation. A TV documentary did come out several months later. The documentary confirmed nothing, however it blamed bureaucratic chaos for what it called the unfortunate rumours, and also claimed that Mizrahi people were irresponsible breeders. The public outrage against the lack of information culminated with the story of Rabbi Uzi Meshulam. Meshulam, a rabbi of Yemeni descent, had campaigned throughout his life about the Yemenite Baby Affair. He would often distribute leaflets about the situation to try and raise awareness about what had happened. Meshulam remained a marginal figure, but he entered the Israeli public eye in 1994 when him and his followers barricaded themselves inside of his house and armed themselves with weapons. They were demanding information about what actually happened to the Yemeni children, and for 5 weeks they effectively experienced a Waco-style siege, where they participated in a standoff with the Israeli authorities. The reference to the Waco siege is important, because it had occurred in America only a year before the situation with Meshulam in Israel. In the Waco siege in America, the Branch Davidians cult led by David Koresh had held out for 51 days against the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, or the ATF, which led to the deaths of 4 federal agents, and eventually nearly 80 Branch Davidian members were killed in a fire that ensued. Meshulam and his followers were called conspiracy theorists, and the similarities between the two served to delegitimize Meshulam's claims about the Yemeni children. After the police siege eventually succeeded, Meshulam and his followers were sent to prison, and eventually in 2013 Meshulam passed away at the age of 60. Sadly, only 3 years later, after his death, he was vindicated, because for the first time, a cabinet minister from Israel by the name of Tzachi Hanegbi went on TV and said, "They took the children and gave them away." This effectively confirmed that what Meshulam and academics had claimed about the Yemenite Baby Affair was true. The Israeli regime had undeniably participated in the abduction and transfer of Yemeni children. Tom Segev, the post-Zionist historian, has argued that chaos may indeed have been the reason for the Yemenite Baby Affair, and more generally that high death rates within the camps had caused confusion. However, Hanegbi's statement on TV to the Israeli media seems to confirm that there was some state collusion to take the children from Yemenite Jews. Since 2016, the investigation into what happened to the Yemeni children has blown wide open. For years, many have known the veracity of what happened to those poor immigrants, but what has been found out since is worse than was first known. Files made public have shown that some of the children were subject to cruel medical tests. In one particular incident, 4 healthy children died after they were given experimental protein injections, and many more died as a result of medical negligence. Hearts of dead children were also removed and sent to US doctors who were interested in the lack of heart disease in Yemen. Haaretz also published in 2021 that the health ministry in Israel was attempting to block a draft report that showed its involvement in the Yemenite Baby Affair. The report showed that doctors, caregivers and nurses had indeed been involved in taking the children, and sometimes were the ones who even received the money from the Ashkenazi parents. The Orientalist perceptions of the Ashkenazi doctors about Mizrahi people were used as justifications for taking the Yemeni children away from their parents. Thus it would seem that this horrendous chapter and its cover-up is closed closing. Justice for those affected by this incident seems to be just around the corner. Whether this can be pinned on bureaucratic chaos or not, the Yemeni children were undeniably taken, and as more of the resources regarding the situation are made public, the whole truth will become clearer. Moreover, the general dismissal of the Yemenite Jews' concerns about what had happened to the children tell an incredibly sad tale.